The whole Dean Park layout was based around running the Class 91 locos. This is the initial reason I added the OHLE masts to the layout, and I hoped one day that a worthy model would arrive. So you could say the history of Dean Park has been geared up for this very moment. So 10 years after starting my campaign, do I finally have a model Class 91 worthy of use on my layout? Let's find out, shall we? If you enjoy the video, please click on those like and subscribe icons. And if you want to give me any feedback, please do so in the comments section below. In the meantime, let's look at the Class 91. Before I look at the Hornby model in any detail, I'm going to give you a quick history of the Class 91 locomotive. The British Rail Class 91 is a high-speed electric locomotive which produces 6,480 horsepower. And these were ordered as a component of the East Coast Main Line modernisation and electrification programme of the late 1980s. The Class 91s were given the name of Intercity 225 to indicate their envisaged top speed of 225 km per hour, which equates to 140 miles an hour. They were also referred to as Electras by British Rail during their development. The class has served the East Coast well for over 30 years, and it's only recently that the first examples have met their end. An end partially hastened due to the COVID lockdowns. While they had to overcome earlier issues, they quickly settled into reliable high-speed service for their operators, which include Intercity, JNER, National Express East Coast, Virgin Trains East Coast, and finally LNER. In addition, a Class 91 91010, which is now 91110, holds the British speed record at 61.7 miles an hour, which was set on the 17th of September 1989. The loco produced by Hornby, number 91111, was built in February 1990 and outshopped as 91011 in Intercity Swall livery. In early operation it carried the name Terence Cuneo, and I remember hunting this loco down at Edinburgh Waverley in the early 1990s as it was part of a rail riders competition. If you snapped a shot of yourself beside the loco and sent it in, you were entered into a prize draw to win the Hornby version of the actual loco. Needless to say I didn't win, but I managed to pick up the actual model a few years later. The photo that's on the screen now of 91111 was given to me by Andy Hamilton, who's kindly given me permission to use it on this video. He also filmed the sequence at the beginning of the video of the actual loco pushing a 225 set out of Edinburgh Waverley to King's Cross. The For the Fallen vinyls were applied to mark the contribution of and lives lost by regiments up and down the East Coast route during the First World War. Train operator East Coast worked with designer Paul Gentleman to present the specially designed Class 91 locomotive. The new look for the locomotive, 91111, was first unveiled at a ceremony at Newcastle Station on October the 14th, 2014, followed a few weeks later by another event at Leeds Station on October 27, and a longer ceremony at London King's Cross on November 7. Looking at this photo, you'll see that the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight 91 on the left is sitting next to the For the Fallen. Now you'll notice For the Fallen has a very distinctive upside down triangular shaped yellow panel on the nose. I couldn't really work out what this was for, and it's thanks to Jan Leach down at AY76 who came up with the answer. As the soldiers went over the top and advanced from their trenches, many of them had steel triangles attached to their rucksacks. These were often made from biscuit tin lids. The main purpose of this was so the spotters at the back of the battlefield could see how far up the battle the troops had progressed. Being made from steel, they reflected in the sun, and it made it easier to spot. So it's really nice and fitting that Paul Gentleman has incorporated this triangular shape into the yellow warning panel at the front of the locomotive. The Hornby 91 has its origins in the late 1980s. In fact, I recall receiving this very model from Scooney Hobbies in Kirkcaldy in 1990. At the time I thought it was great. As a 12-year-old boy, I would run it full throttle around my layout, almost jumping the tracks due to the speed I demanded from my trains. I suppose every kid's the same, the faster the better. This model wasn't as detailed in terms of features as the previous Hornby HST or APT models, as it didn't have any lighting features on it at all. The pantograph is large and clunky, and the Ringfield motor was loud and didn't do well at low speed running. Coupled to that, the lack of added detail, and it really was a model that did not age well. Hornby continued to trot this model out until around 2016, but really it was past its sell-by date by then. The game had moved on, but Hornby hadn't got that memo. Even when I returned to the hobby in 2012, the Class 91 from Hornby was past it. In fact, I even started a popular thread on RM Web, Who Wants a New Class 91? And I pretty much harassed Hornby from 2012 to give us a new model. So there's a tiny part of me that thinks maybe they've listened to my comments and hassle through the years. However, it might also be something to do with the fact that Cavalex announced their version in 2019, a model that was later parked. I really want to get stuck into talking about the livery of this model, but first I'll cover the actual model shape and its details. First off, does it look like a 91? Yes. Hornby have captured the overall dimensions and form of this loco. Without boring you into intricate details and stats, I have measured the main areas of the loco and they do scale up to the proportions of the actual loco, so that's good news. What's a big improvement on the previous toy model is that the side grills are accurately and correctly done, and they're not just a simple moulded lump of plastic. That was always a major bugbear of mine with the old model. The bogies on this model are pretty good. The moulding has an adequate amount of relief and depth, and it does capture the look of the Class 91. Pickups are attached to each wheel, and it's also good to see that there is no traction tyres. Moving round to the front, this area has really been improved from the previous version. Lights are now fully functioning and fit and finish is good. This particular model should not have clear side section to the lighting area, however Hornby have produced this as one clear moulded part. Modellers may wish to paint the sides black to match the real loco. The light clusters, frame and horn grille are silver, and these are actually black on the real loco when painted in this particular livery. However, I have seen photos of it wearing silver parts in this area, so I'm therefore assuming Hornby have chosen to model that later version. The buffer beam is impressive. It's got sprung buffers that can actually be retracted, which is a nice touch and matches that detail of the Bachmann Class 90. It's got a rubbing bar in place, and considerations also been given to fit in additional pipes and cabling. In order to fit some of the detailing parts, you'll need to remove the tension lock coupler like I've done here. However, some jumper cables are already fitted from the factory, which is good to see. What's not as nice is you get this open NEM pocket there beneath the rubbing bar after you remove the tension lock coupler. Hopefully it'll be covered up slightly with some of the cabling that I'm going to fit. That leads me nicely onto the aspect of the NEM pockets. It's great to see that Hornby have given the loco this option to run blunt end first by fitting the pockets at both ends. Whilst it wasn't a common occurrence to see the 91 running blunt end, it did happen occasionally. Say for example when a DVT failed, it would run round the train and haul from the other end. Just a quick look underneath, you'll see that the actual NEM pocket is not connected to the bogies, which is a great step forward, and it's on a kind of kinematic spring return, and the same can be said for the number 2 end. Moving on to the cab, there's a decent representation of the interior with seats, dashboard and also the front facing camera that's been attached to the top of the dash at the left hand side there. I'm glad to see that there's no sprung cab doors here, as it gives the loco a cleaner look in 00 gauge. The windscreen wipers are correct for this version of the 91, which differ from the original ones as fitted when the loco entered service. Looking at the side profile, it's nice to see separately fitted handrails, or certainly they look separately fitted to me. However, the grills are part of the moulding. It would be nice to see some fine etched grills there, especially on a brand new model. This might have increased the costs, and I am aware with my experience in product design and manufacturing, there's a certain trade-off between details that you want to add and what the accountant wants it to cost. All other panel lines and details are sharp and crisp, and really I'm impressed by the overall look of the side of the loco. Moving on to the roof, this is really quite impressive. The 91 in this model has the correct parts added that represent the loco in its current form. So this differs from the loco as in original form in its, say, Intercity Swallow livery. It's really well moulded and crisp, and it's nice to see an etched fitted part there and there. It just elevates the detail on what really, usually is quite a bland area of a loco. Moving on to the well, which houses the electrical equipment and of course the pantograph. It looks good. Hornby have done a bit of work here and all the components in the right place. As I just mentioned, this etched grill plate here just adds that little bit of extra detail, which is good. The pantograph, however, is already split in opinion. It's plastic. Now for me, plastic pantograph isn't the end of the world. A poisable one is easier for me than say for example a pre-sprung one, as long as it's robust enough and I can set it to the correct height for my particular OHLE, I'm happy. However, if it falls apart when you touch it, that's pretty poor. For me, this pantograph sits above the flimsy APT pantograph, but well below the pantographs of, say, the Bachmann Class 90 and the Heljan Class 86. The latter model has a sprung metal pantograph and it's on a cheaper model. So you know, that's where it starts to confuse me a little bit. However, it is what it is, and I can live with plastic pantographs. Let's start with the bits that I like. The complex livery has been really well designed on this model, and it's really accurate to the original. The nose and the blunt end have a good application of the yellow warning panels with no sign of the primers under it. The lines between the panels and the For the Fallen livery are crisp, and the roof is painted in a light grey and the coverage of paint is good. The data panels and overhead warning flashes are crisply moulded. The Cantrell line is also well applied with no major wonky dips or wobbles. The tampon printing processes used in this livery application must be commended. It's an extremely complex livery and Hornby designers and the factory have done a good overall job here. However, where things start to get a bit wobbly is in the sharpness of some of the aspects of the livery application. First off, the For the Fallen nameplate looks a bit fuzzy. Luckily, etched examples are included in the box, which will certainly improve the look in this area. Looking at the nose, there's a small issue with the artwork. It doesn't completely line up when transferred from the cab corners to the nose front. A small issue perhaps, but frustrating for some. My issue is with the seemingly textured appearance on the artwork here. It looks like it's been tampered on 300 grit sandpaper. It's smooth to touch and looks good from 2 feet away, but it just looks a bit strange and almost gritty close up. It doesn't really detract from the overall livery application though, which has been excellent throughout the model. Looking at the underside of the loco, nice to see some separately fitted detail here, including the 2 metal etched grille areas there. We've got a day and night light running switch there, so you can obviously flick between the two. Looking at the bogies, these 2 screws here hold the actual bogie mounting and actual moulding in position. You undo these, you can get access to the gearbox and to remove the wheel sets. There are gear wheels sticking out the bottom of the bogie there. I'm not quite sure why they've done that, maybe for ease of lubrication, but will that pick up dust and fluff and obviously affect the running? I'm not sure. Right, it's time to get this thing on the track and see how it performs. What I'll do is I'll probably run it for about an hour and a half, overall kind of scenarios of point work, crossings, inclines, and I'll report back and I'll give you some running shots of it in its test as well, and we'll see how it actually performs as a brand new Hornby model. Right, prior to putting on the DCC layout, I ran it in on my rolling road in DC without a decoder, half an hour in each direction, which I always do with a new loco anyway, just to bed in the motor and the gears a little bit more. Obviously it's been minimal tested at the factory and been stuck in a box and shipped from the other side of the world, and when it comes to your layout, it's like a new car. It's very tight and needs some running in. I put a Zemo 21 pin decoder in it straight off like I use in all my locos, but the cab lights wouldn't work using that decoder. I think the decoder needed a bit of remapping. So anyway, I put a standard Bachmann one in here, and actually the cab lights do work. And the cab lights are F5 on this particular Bachmann decoder. And obviously as you change direction, the cab light goes off and goes on in the other direction, with obviously the driving in first. So I have no problems with that now, having found a decoder that works. I'm happy with the Bachmann standard decoder. Now that I've looked at all aspects of the model including its running characteristics, it's time for me to give my overall summary. Livery and appearance, all things considered, Hornby have done a great job here. Yes, it's not perfect, but with such a complex livery there's bound to be a compromise when it comes to manufacturing this model with this particular livery application. When you add up all the plus points, these do outweigh the small negatives. Therefore, I'm happy to give it a kind of rating of 4 out of 5. That's me giving it a good hour's worth of testing around the track, some light engined and obviously some hauling the Mark IIFs. In some of the clips you have seen, yeah, it performs well. I think it's a wee bit clunky across some point work, especially like the three-way points and the diamond crossings. I don't know quite why it is, but when I look at the wheels, there's actually quite a lot of lateral movement on the bogies there. When I did get out of the box to start with, there was a lot of wobble on the actual locomotive as it went along. Didn't have to be on a turnout or a curve, it just, you know, general movement on a straight piece of track, a bit of wobble from the bogies. I've actually checked the back-to-back gauges for these particular wheel sets using a back-to-back gauge, and you know, a couple of them needed adjustment, to be honest. I also took the bottom part off of the bogie to reveal the actual gearbox and the actual wheel bearings, and the brass bearings that locate into the sides of the gearbox basically, you know, they're not easy to get in the right position. I don't know why that is, but that maybe caused some of the wobbling, so I made sure they were aligned properly. I put it back together and that has improved the wobbling to a degree. It is running pretty well now, I have to admit. Should I have to do that straight from the box? Possibly not, no, not with a model that's in excess of £200. However, it is performing better now that it is, you know, loosening up a little bit and it's bedding in. So how does that affect the overall performance rating that I'm going to give this model? When looking at the performance, I'm looking at the overall package. How smoothly does it accelerate, decelerate? Is it quiet or quite noisy? And how does it negotiate track points and crossings and complex track work? With everything in mind, as I've talked about with the slight wobble and stuff, it is getting better as the model runs it itself in. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I'm going to revisit this particular issue in a future video to let you know if it's got any better as a result of being on the track more and bedding itself in. So 3 out of 5 is pretty fair just now, I think, although I'd have liked it to have been a lot higher, especially for a brand new model. Thanks to the 21-pin decoder, we've now more lighting functions, including the cab lights that I already showed you, as well as independently working head and tail lights. Hornby deserve to be commended for finally moving to the 21-pin and consigning obviously their 8-pin models to history. Who knows, they might continue the 8-pin in the steam locos that haven't got any lighting functions, but that'll be interesting to see with future releases. Hornby's packaging is always impressive with the artwork on the front. It's one of the few companies actually that bother putting a nice rendered image on the front of their boxes, which is nice. You get a nice sense of excitement as to what's inside. What is inside is a standard plastic clamshell which holds the loco securely. I've not really any faults with that. A couple of people I've spoken to have mentioned marks on top of the model where the clamshell's a wee bit on the tight side, or the model's just maybe not being put in exactly correctly into the packaging, but I can't fault it. Pretty good. I'm going to give it an overall 4 out of 5 for details and features. It's a good package. It includes some neat details such as the retractable buffers, a good selection of pipework. You've obviously got the NEM pockets at both ends, which increase the the functioning of the 91 in service, and there's obviously some nicely etched parts and separately fitted parts there as well. I'll knock a point off for the plastic pantograph. Not that it's a big issue for me, but it's still not as good as the opposition. Looking at the ratings on the screen now, I would say that overall this model is worth a 3.5 out of 5. It's good, but it's not without its issues. On that basis, should you avoid it, consider it, shortlist it, or just go ahead and buy it? Well, as you see there, I've recommended that you shortlist this model. Well, that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any feedback in the comment section below, and don't forget to click on those like and subscribe icons. Until the next time, take care, thanks for watching, cheers for now.